Hello, hello, hello. How are you guys doing today? Okay, so today is my 30th sobriety birthday. It feels surreal. It absolutely feels so surreal. If you watch my vlog, I have been talking a lot about this in the last few weeks. It's kind of a weird feeling because you know, it's like 30 years, right? Right? It seems like this monumental thing. But if you're sober, it really doesn't. Like, it feels like it should feel like a huge deal. But in all reality, it just feels like another day. It feels like a daily reprieve. It really does. I don't really know how to explain it. It was really nice today. I woke up to a lot of text messages from a lot of people wishing me a happy birthday. And that felt great. And last night I did some, you know, some things to celebrate my birthday for myself. And tonight I'm going with my sponsor to celebrate my birthday. And, you know, it's surreal because so many people are like 30 years, 30 years, 30 years. But, you know, 30 years doesn't really feel a whole lot different than 29 years felt or than 28 years felt. But I will say that this year, the one difference is that I've kind of looked collectively at the past 30 years. Whereas before, I would look a lot at the beginning, or I would look at like the last year. This year, I've kind of looked collectively, I don't know if this makes sense, but like at the past 30 years. And I think the thing that's the most surreal about this is that when I first got sober, and I have lots of questions I'm going to answer today. I put up a Q&A on Instagram, so I'm going to answer a lot of questions I've never answered before about my addiction and my sobriety. But, you know, when I think back on those early days of sobriety, like in treatment and right after I got out of treatment, it's weird, you know, like if you had shown me a picture of my life today and you had said 30 years from now, well, first of all, YouTube didn't even exist. So that's a thing. But if you had said 30 years from now, you know, you're going to have been sober for 30 years, that would have been a shock to my system, first of all, because that was not my plan. My plan was to stay sober long enough to get people off my back. That was really my plan when I first got sober. But if you had shown me a picture or a video, if you had shown me this video and said, okay, 30 years, first of all, I would have been like, and your hair's white now? Like, what's going on? Your hair's white. And you have a beard too. You look so old. That's probably what I would have said. But, you know, if you had, you know, shown me this video 30 years ago, I think that I would have been like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. I had lost all hope, I think, for any kind of future for myself. I couldn't picture any kind of future for myself. I didn't really care if I lived or died. And so the fact that I'm even sitting here right now is just, it's a miracle. And I feel very blessed. And it's surreal. I don't really know how to explain it other than that. And I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful to have made it this far. You know, for those of you that have not watched my past 900 videos that I've done about sobriety, I talk a lot about sobriety. In fact, when I started on YouTube 8.5 years ago, one of my decisions that I made was that I was going to talk a lot about sobriety in my videos because sobriety is something that's at the forefront of my mind every day, all day long. I mean, it's a priority in my life. One of the first things I learned when I got sober was always make your sobriety a priority because without your sobriety, you have nothing else. And so that's just kind of how I lived my life. And so when I got on YouTube, it was going to be no different than that. I'm very public. I'm very, you know, vocal about my sobriety. And so it was going to be no different when I got on YouTube. And I also felt like, you know, so many people had come before me and they had planted the seed by sharing their stories of hope with me. And that if I could do that just for one person, then I had served my purpose of sharing my story online, you know. I was thinking about this the other day, which is kind of surreal. You know, I talk about how I've been on YouTube now for 8.5 years, which seems like a really, really long time. But when you put it in perspective, you know, I had been sober 21 and a half years at the time, almost 22 years at the time that I started on YouTube. On this channel, I was just short of, you know, 22 years sober. And that's a massive amount of sobriety on its own, to think that that's like, you know, it seems like when I started on YouTube is kind of like when this part of my life started. But, you know, I had a long life before I ever stepped foot on YouTube. And, you know, a long sobriety life before I ever stepped on YouTube. So for those of you, like I said, that haven't watched my 900 videos before that I've talked about this, today is my 30th sobriety birthday. My sobriety birthday is December 17th of 1994. I was 22 and a half years old. I'm 52 right now. I keep on saying 53. I always borrow time. I'm 52 right now. I will be 53 in June. So, I was 22 and a half years old when I got sober. And it was my 5th treatment attempt. So it was not my first treatment attempt. And I did not want to go into treatment. It was not I didn't have a desire. I wasn't begging to go. It was after a crazy night of just, I've shared that story so many times that I'm not going to get into the weeds of that unless somebody asks questions about it today. But I went to treatment. I think it was for 35 days. Reluctantly, and I just shared this on my vlog. I've been talking a lot about it on my vlog, so if you want to hear more about it, go check out my vlog. It's like every single day for like the last week I've been talking about it. Especially yesterday's vlog, I think I called it "The Party Is Over." I talked a lot about it at the end, and the day before that as well. But, you know, I went into treatment, and I can remember the first week. It was, you know, around Christmas time. It was very, very cold. I live in Indianapolis, Indiana. It was very, very cold winter conditions in Indiana. And I just felt very trapped in treatment. And the first week, I did everything I could to get out of treatment and was very loud and resistant to the whole process. The second week, I learned to shut my mouth long enough to just kind of get by. The third week, I started participating because I started hearing things that I related to. And then the fourth week was when I was starting to prepare to go home, and I was scared. And I was really scared to go home. And I can remember my counselor at the time, who is still a dear friend of mine today, and she said to me, you know, you have to have a balance between fear and readiness to go. And she said, this will be the hardest thing you ever do in your life, but it will be the most valuable thing you ever do in your life. And she was 100% correct when she said that. And there will be laughter in this video today, and there will be tears as well. And little did I know when I left treatment in the middle of winter that that would start for me this journey of just amazing opportunities, unbelievable relationships that I've had, 2 previous romantic relationships, and my marriage to my husband now that I said to him last night, I said, you've been with me longer than half of my sobriety because we've been together 16 years, which that alone seems surreal, you know? The best friend in my entire life, you know? When I got sober, they promised me that I would repair relationships in my life and that, you know, other things would come true. But they never said that I would find the dearest friend that I have ever had in my entire life, and that is my friend Tanya Jean. She has been my heartstone. She's been my rock. I met her at about a year and a half sober. I'm so entirely grateful for that woman. She's my everything in my life. And we have shared so many things. And last night, so on Instagram, I wanted to post a picture today, you know, over there about my sobriety birthday. And I don't ever post pictures of myself using, and I don't really, to be honest with you, I think I got rid of a lot of them. I don't think I have a lot left, because I went through probably, I don't know, 200 or 300 pictures last night, in my basement. So if you want to see some pictures of Peter back in the day when I was using, go over to my Instagram today. I'm going to put a post up over there. But I was looking through all these pictures, and it just was taking me back through like all the memories of, the majority of the pictures were from like early sobriety when I used to have cameras and we didn't have, you know, cell phones and things like that. And, or, you know, we didn't use cell phones as like cameras as much, and we didn't have Instagram and all that kind of stuff. And, so I had all these pictures from early sobriety, and, I had this friend of mine that, was really implemental to my early sobriety. And I hadn't talked to her in probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. We would keep up on Facebook every once in a while. And you know, you lose people in life. You know, people move on. People, you know, life changes, life goes on, and things happen. And so this person was really, 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 really implemental in my sobriety, and helping me in so many times in my sobriety, and sharing their story, and had a really, really, really powerful story themselves. And so I was like, I haven't seen them show up on Facebook in forever. And so I was looking through these pictures and, you know, saw some pictures of her. And so I looked her up on Facebook, and her Facebook wasn't there anymore. And I was like, what's going on? Like, she used to be really active on Facebook. And I looked her, I Google searched her name, and her obituary came up. And she had passed away almost 2 years ago. And I didn't know. And, you know, like I said, people move away, things happen, and whatever. And we had kind of like completely two different groups on two different sides of town, so it's not surprising that I didn't hear. But I just want to say that there will be people that come into your life that forever change your life. And you won't ever get the chance to tell them how much they impacted your life or changed your life. And the fact that this happened to me at my sobriety birthday is not missed on me. I think it's a reminder that at the end of the day, what I have been given in the last 30 years, I have some badass luxury bags. I have taken some amazing vacations, you know. I have a lot of really nice, you know, superficial things. None of that matters. None of that matters, and I've given all away for the exchanges, the experiences, the laughter, the tears, the cups of coffee I've shared, the fountain pops I've had, the long talks, the short laughs that I've had with so many people that I've had the opportunity to meet as a result of my sobriety today. And that is the thing that I'm most grateful for. And so I want to dedicate this video to my friend Nicole, because she was such a huge part of my sobriety, and I'm so thankful for her. Okay, so let's get into this. So I asked you guys what you wanted me to talk about in this video today for my 30th sobriety birthday. And damn it, it's my birthday, so I get to cry. I cry in a lot of my videos, but I'm going to cry today if I want to cry. So I asked you guys what you wanted to hear. A lot of people suggested that I should do like 30 lessons over 30 years that I've learned, which would be really easy. I could do 2,000 lessons I've learned. The problem would be like narrowing it down and having to plan ahead. And so I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to do a Q&A. And so I asked you guys on Instagram what you wanted to hear from me about sobriety, my addiction to sobriety story, and what you guys wanted to know. I read some of the questions. I got quite a few. I read some of the questions, and the questions ranged everywhere from like early sobriety to active addiction to like my sobriety today and things like that. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to read them. Now I get kind of caught up on questions sometimes, so I'm going to try to like kind of move through these fast. Anything that I share with you is just my personal experience. It's just what I've gone through. It's just my personal experience. I will say this, and I say this in all my videos about recovery, or I try to, that I am sober by way of a 12-step program. That is not the only way to get sober. There are lots of ways to get sober out there, and I honor them all. I just don't want people to die from addiction today. I want people to live full lives. I want people to repair their relationships or have further relationships. I want people to be happy, joyous, and free. However you get sober and do that's up to you. I just got sober. There really, at the time that I got sober, there really weren't a lot of other options. And so we were just kind of like, you know, hey, you got to go to these meetings. And that's how I got started. And it worked for me. And I'm still here. And I'm still active in a 12-step program. I have a sponsor in a 12-step program. I work steps. I have a home group. I'm of service. A lot of people ask, I always get this question. People are like, do you sponsor people? I don't know why like that's such a mysterious question. If you're in a 12-step program, it's expected that you sponsor people. So yes, I've sponsored, you know, many people through the years. It's not my story. It's not mine to tell their story. And so I don't really get into a lot of that. I can share my story of how I've been sponsored, and I have been very, very blessed to have, I counted the other night, I think I've had 6 sponsors total in 30 years. My first sponsor was kind of just like a catch-all sponsor. And by that, I mean, it was just like I had to have a sponsor to get out of treatment. My second sponsor was the husband of a dear friend of mine, and he was the one that I worked steps with the very first time. And if it wasn't for that man, I probably wouldn't be alive today. He shared things when I shared things with him, he shared things with me that made me feel like I was not so all alone. Things that I was so embarrassed and so ashamed to share, that I had things that had happened to me as a child, things that had happened to me as an adult, things that I had participated in, things that I was part of. And he really felt me I felt seen by that man. And sadly, he passed away years later of a heroin overdose. But I am forever grateful for him. And he just forever changed my life. And then my third and fourth sponsor have both passed away as well. And they passed away sober. And they passed away 2 years ago, both of them. They passed away within 6 months of each other. And my one sponsor I had at 2 different times in my life. And he was the sponsor that I had when my mom passed away. And he was basically my sponsor for the majority of my life. And then I had another sponsor in between there. And I love that man. I love all these people that I've had the privilege of working with have forever changed my life in one way or another. And you don't get another sponsor because that sponsor's not working for you. It's like sometimes, like, you have a teacher that's brought you so far and then you need another teacher, right? Today, there was a long period in my life. So as a gay man in 12-step programs, we are taught that it is appropriate so I was always brought up that men sponsor men and women sponsor women, okay? And that a sponsor should be somebody that has a year or more sobriety time and has a working knowledge of the 12 steps and also has sponsorship themselves. Like, they're sponsorable, they have sponsor. So I had all these relationships with men, but because I would always, have heterosexual men as sponsors. And it was fantastic. But there was something that was never clicking for me there. There was something that, there was there was an aspect that was missing that I would see that they had with other men, and that my female friends had with their sponsors, that just, it was missing. And I don't even know how long ago it was, maybe 10 years ago, maybe longer than that. I was in therapy and I talked to my therapist about it, and I had this woman that I knew. I wouldn't have considered her a friend. I mean, we were friendly, but she wasn't a friend, and I really respected her recovery. I mean, this is a woman that, she has been known to, hop, 6-foot concrete fences and high heel shoes to, go into crack houses so that she can, pull people out of there that are overdosing and things like that. This woman is a powerhouse in recovery, and I madly respect her. And she is in the steps, and she knows her shit, and she is not afraid to tell me things that I need to work on. And I always say that a good friend will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And she is that for me, as is my friend Tanya. And so I decided that I was going to get a woman as a sponsor. And so we're taught that gay men can have female sponsors, and that lesbians can have male sponsors in 12-step programs. And there's just a lot of, like, suggestions. I mean, that a lot of people don't follow a lot of things, but there's just suggestions, and I've typically always followed the suggestions, except for the suggestion of not getting in a relationship as soon as you get out of recovery. I had a boyfriend in a week, okay? And I thought a boyfriend was going to fix me. And that was probably one of the most powerful lessons that I've learned in the last 30 years, is that I do not need a man to define my worth today. I feel blessed that I have a husband that stands beside me as an equal, and that we have a partnership of 16 years. But I do not need a man to define my existence today. And for a long time, that's part of my story. I had men that mistreated me, men that abused me. I had men that spoke horribly to me, and I tolerated that to some degree. And I'm not saying that that's everybody's story, that's just mine. I think I tolerated that to some degree because I felt that I needed their validation for my own self-worth because I had none. And that's just part of my story. And so to be in a healthy relationship today with a man that I choose to call my partner in life, and that we share things, is super, super powerful. It's super powerful. He looked over at me last night before he went to bed. I was getting up from a nap and he was going to bed, and he said to me, he held my hand and he said, "I just want to let you know that I'm so incredibly proud of you, and you inspire me every single day." And to hear that from somebody when 30 years ago, okay, what I was hearing was, "You're a piece of shit. You're lucky that I'm staying with you," and things like that. And not only that, but a lot of things I've never talked about online. A lot of the relationships that I was in and how I was treated. But to go from all of that to having the husband that I have today is literally is a gift of recovery. Okay, so that's my story. I just wanted to share that. I wanted to share about the 12-step part because a lot of people ask me about that. And I'm just one story of millions of stories in a 12-step program. I am not a representative of any 12-step program. I'm just sharing my story. You might hear somebody else share a completely different story. Okay, so let's get into some of these questions that you guys asked me. Interestingly enough, somebody says, "Do you think one type of recovery fixes all? Are you open to others taking other routes to recovery?" Actually, and I share about this in almost all of my videos. I always say that I'm respectful of all kinds of recovery. Yeah, I don't think that there's any one way to work recovery. I just don't. I will say that that's probably an opinion that's changed for me over the years. You know, I've been sober. I'm considered an old timer. Okay, now that I have 30 years, I can say that. And so I've been around for a long time. You know, when I first got sober, like, I think they were using Antabuse at the time, which is a drug that if you take it and you drink on it, it makes you horrifically sick. I've known a lot of people that have drank through Antabuse and are able to drink on it and things like that. But, you know, since I have gotten sober, and I worked in a treatment facility for 13 years as well, and I was trained to work with patients that were on buprenorphine, which is Suboxone. I mean, right as soon as it was introduced as a maintenance drug. You know, through the years, I have seen a lot of things change as far as treatment options. You know, there's sober, there's California sober, there's, you know, different kinds of sober, there's like MAP programs, which is medically assisted treatment. I think there's all different kinds of way for sobriety. This is just what I did. And like I said, there weren't really a lot of other options when I got sober. It was kind of like you go into a 12-step program. If you watch any of the movies from back in the day, one of my very favorite movies ever was, Clean and Sober. And if you watch that movie, it's kind of like he goes into treatment. They just go to meetings. You have to get a sponsor. And that is very, I think I looked and that movie came out in 1988. That movie is very consistent with what my experience was, where it wasn't even a question about, well, I want to do something different for my sobriety. It was just, there was only one way, and that was a 12-step program. Interestingly enough, I watched last night another one of my favorite movies, which is a documentary, and it's on Amazon Prime, and if you have any interest in sobriety, it's fantastic, and it's probably I would say, the best addiction movie documentary I've ever seen, and it's called Bobby Joe Under the Influence, and it's about a woman, and she actually got sober in 95, and I got sober in 94, and she got sober in Kansas City, and it's about how she, through service work and starting halfway houses, like, she's given back to the recovery community and helped addicts and alcoholics. But when you kind of hear her story and other people's story at that time that she got sober, that's what it was. It wasn't like, we weren't talking about medically assisted treatment when I got sober. That was really, I mean, that wasn't anything we talked about. Suboxone wasn't around. I mean, we weren't talking about those things. There was methadone clinics and there was Antabuse, and not a lot of people were using Antabuse. And people would, I mean, and I had heard from so many people that, I mean, methadone wasn't something that they were, you know, that wasn't what they were looking at for me anyway. But I had so many people that I knew that had gone to methadone clinics that were, I mean, I have a lot of issues with methadone clinics. I know people have done well on them, but I have a lot of issues with them. They're for pay, they're for profit. And I had so many people tell me that it's harder to get off methadone than it is to get off heroin. So I don't know about that. But I think those were the only options other than a 12-step program at that time were methadone clinics and Antabuse. And they weren't really putting a lot of people on Antabuse. And I think in both of them, you still had to work 12-step programs, you know? So, yeah, I'm open to anything. I just want people not to die today, you know? I will say this, that I think that one of the biggest misconceptions about, like, 12-step programs is that people will say, like, I read things online and people will be like, oh, they're so culty, or they're blah, 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 they're so, like, biblical and whatever. You know, so the writings do come across sometimes as, like, kind of old school, like, biblical Christian, but, you know, I mean, you also have to look at the time that the book was written. The books were written, you know? And that's the first thing. The second thing is this, is that, and if my best friend were here, she would tell you the same thing. If this were a religious program, I wouldn't be sitting here today with 30 years sober. The fact that I was able to come in and develop my own sense of spirituality was really important. And I also have many friends of mine in sobriety that are agnostic and things like that. Number one. Number two, it's interesting that it gets called a cult a lot, because I don't know. I mean, I've watched a lot of true crime documentaries about cults, and if it's a cult, it's the only cult that I've ever gone to that they don't beg me to stay. In fact, they tell me if you don't like what we have, you can leave anytime you want. That they don't demand anything from you. You don't even have to give any money. You can. I mean, they're fully self-supporting, so you can donate money if you want, but you don't have to. They don't ask anything from you. In fact, they don't even ask for you to show up, you know? They just will, you know, love you until you can love yourself. I don't really understand the cult. It's interesting when people say that. That being said, I do know a lot of people that have had really bad experiences in 12-step programs, but I think it's a microcosm of the world. I think there's bad experiences everywhere. I think there's bad experiences in schools and colleges and workplaces and factories. I think there's bad experiences in neighborhoods and friend groups and families. Do I expect that 12-step programs are going to be perfect and there's not going to be any bad experiences in that? No, not whatsoever. And that's not my plea. You know, do whatever you want to do. But what I will say is if you're going to give anything a chance, give it a chance long enough that maybe it'll stick and then you can make, you know, a decision. That's what I'll say. When I came in, I was told give it 90 days and do everything you can for 90 days. At the end of 90 days, if you don't like what we're giving you, then we will happily return your misery. And that was what I was told. But no, I honor anyway that people choose to get sober. Okay, somebody said, were your friendships affected? Did people act or treat you differently after you got sober? Somebody said, I had that experience. Okay, so when I was in treatment, my counselor had me call my friends and tell them that I could no longer hang out with them, right? Which was interesting. Now, I did have two friends, well, I had three friends that actually came to visit me while I was in treatment. Two of them, I just talked about this on my vlog the other night. They came to visit me on Christmas Day and were really not, I mean, my dad called everybody in my life and said, if you care about Peter, do not continue to enable him. Because I was calling people, asking them to bring me money and get me out of treatment, all this kind of stuff. And my dad, like, just put a stop to that real quick. So these two guys that came to visit me, they were probably my closest friends at the time. They were not willing to enable me and told me, like, how worried they were about me and that they were really stressed out about me. Another one of my friends came to visit me, and I went up, and she had brought me a gift and things like that, and I went up, and I looked at her. They were like, they called me because it was after a visitation. They're like, so-and-so's here at the front desk. And so I went up, and I said, I can't have you here. Like, looking at you is like looking at a joint, because she and I, like, smoked so much weed together. And she was really hurt by that. Later, she understood. Like, we talked about it later, and she understood. I don't know that I necessarily lost a lot of people from it. I think that at first I thought I was going to worry, I was going to ruin other people's good time, but like, people kind of stopped calling, and I stopped calling them, you know. I was doing my thing. I was going to meetings, and I was, you know, at home a lot. And when I got sober, there weren't a lot of young people getting sober. When I got sober at 22 and a half, that was young to get sober. I mean, I've met people now that got sober at that time, that were younger than me. But at that time, and especially in Indianapolis, there were like 5 or 6, 10 of us that were sober at that time. There weren't that many, and we didn't really know each other that well. There was like a couple people that hung out together, but I didn't really know them. And so there was like one woman, I call her woman today because she's my age, but like there was one girl that I knew that we went to meetings, and I would see her when I started going back to college again on campus. But there weren't a lot of people that were my age and sober. So, I mean, I was hanging out with a lot of like older people. Like I can remember hanging out with I think it was my first New Year's, my first a year sober. And I went to like some party and played Trivial Pursuit and ate pizza and drank like 2 liters with all of these like guys that were between the ages of like 30, 50. And I was like, if this is as good as it gets, like I'm going back out and I'm going to start using again. And right after that, I met my best friend. I'll never forget that. I was like, if this is as good as it gets, like I cannot do this anymore. Like this is not worth it to me. It just was like the most depressing New Year's ever. But I don't think I lost people. I didn't like necessarily give up people. You know, what I realized was that a lot of my relationships were just tied by our youth. I don't know that I thought that at the time. I thought that they were stronger friendships, but like after the effect, or after getting out of treatment and like starting to go to meetings and stuff, what I realized was that most of those friendships weren't really bound by any true meaning whatsoever. They were just bound by our active using together. And a lot of those people were not addicts and alcoholics, you know? A lot of those people today have stopped and got, like, I was going to say get sober. They've stopped and gone on with their lives, and they're very successful and have master's degrees and PhDs and families and whatever. I've lost a lot of people that I used to use with as well that have passed away since. I think that was one of the hardest things for me, is that I was probably the first one out of, like, everybody that I was going out with, and let's say if I had like 4 or 5 different circles, like 50 to 100 people, I was like the first one that got sober. And it was really hard because I really wanted other people to like learn from what I had gone through. And right after I got sober, somebody that I knew passed away from an overdose. And that was hard because I thought, I wish that I could, like, maybe, like, what I went through would have been more of a lesson for them, you know? I don't know, but hold on a second, this is gonna stop. Okay, but no, I don't know that I necessarily lost a lot of people. The people that I think that I did lose early on, you know, I believe that you have to be selfish in your recovery, and so I had to take care of myself. I wasn't really worried a lot about other people. I was when I was in treatment. I was trying to keep up with who my ex was dating and what they were doing and all this kind of stuff, and I'll never forget, I was on the payphone, and my counselor came up and she just hung up the phone. She goes, "We're done with this." She was like, your attention needs to be on your sobriety. Like, you're done with this. And that was a really valuable lesson for me. When you were dating, did anyone you dated ever make you feel weird for being sober? No, I never have had that actually happen. Isn't that strange? But I also think that that has to do with the fact that I always lead about being sober. Like, before I would even go on a date with somebody, they would know that. Interestingly enough, when I think back on, like, my first date with Alex, and my husband drinks, my first date with Alex, my ex drank when I met him, but then he, like, stopped drinking because it was just the two of us that were hanging out. So he wasn't like he was just, you know. And then my first boyfriend that I started dating, he did drink as well. And he and I dated from, like, the end of my first year sober. We dated for 4.5 years. My ex and I dated for 6.5 years, and Alex and I have been together 16 years. Nobody in that time, and I dated other people. Like, when I first got out of treatment, like I said, I got me a boyfriend right away. It was a guy that was asking, that I had met on my last night using, okay, that I had met, and, he was asking one of my good friends, like, how I was doing and checking in on me while I was in treatment. And that was real attractive to me, that somebody cared how I was doing when I was in treatment. So he was my boyfriend right away. And then after him, I dated this guy that was in a film studies class that I was in. And sadly, he has passed away as well, related to drug issues. And he wasn't real heavy into it at that point. I think he was, you know, but then later on, but he was a heavy pot smoker, and I kind of realized that that was not going to work for somebody that was trying to stay sober. He wouldn't smoke pot around me, but he'd, like, get high and then come. And if you don't think that that affects people, it does. Because I can remember being early sober, and he would, like, supposed to show up at 9, and he'd show up at, like, 11, and he would be, like, high. And I'd be like, I can't believe, dude, that you showed up here high, like, at 11 o'clock. Like, it's just, and he'd be like, what's up? Like, we're just going to hang out, listen to some music. I'm like, yeah, but you're fucking high, okay? And I'm not. And this is not cool. And I think that's really, really disrespectful. You know, it's like, smoke pot, drink, do whatever you want to do, but if you're around sober people, just because you go outside, okay, and smoke weed, or just because you are smoking on a pen, or you're drinking or whatever, we're still dealing with you not being sober, okay? It's not about the cravings to us necessarily 100% of the time. It's not about we're wanting to use, because it's about the fact that we're dealing with somebody that's on a different level at that point, and that's not necessarily always fun for sober people. But I've never had anybody, people have always asked me questions and been interested in it. I've never had anybody that has, like, shamed me or made me, I have to, like, put up my foot, sorry, shamed me or made me feel less for being sober. I've never had that experience, as far as dating. And, you know, I have had friends of mine that has had that happen. I had a friend of mine that her girlfriend, like, they got into a fight at a concert, and her girlfriend was like, and she was sober and her girlfriend was not, and her girlfriend was drinking, and she, like, threw a drink on her and said, why don't you go get a server token? And I'll never forget that. I mean, like, I've had that happen to a lot of people that I know, but I've never experienced it myself. But I can tell you right now, if something like that happened to me, I'd be done in a heartbeat. You know, I'm not going to have people disrespect my sobriety to my face, okay? First of all, I stay sober for me today. I also stay sober because I don't want the people around me to be affected by that. You know, a lot of people will be like, do you ever think about this? Do you ever think about that? I think about the fact that if I relapse, that tomorrow you will not see me on YouTube anymore, okay? I'm going to be off and gone, and I will be so gone that people will not know where I'm at, including my husband. And my husband is very trained to know that if I pick up again, he's gone, he's out. My family would be gone. They made it very, very clear. And I need those boundaries in my life to know what I'm going to lose if I go back out there and use. I talked about this in my vlog the other day. I think the most powerful thing that happened to me, and one of the reasons why I'm sitting here today, is because when I went through treatment the last time, my dad, who is a retired surgeon, he was really good friends with my addictionologist. And that addictionologist walked my dad through the process of helping me get sober. And basically at that point, what my dad said was, you can do A, B, and C, or I'm done with you. I remember I had to sign this behavior, well, it was this behavior contract that I had. And I had had behavior contracts before, like, you know, like go to so many meetings a week, go to therapy, blah, blah, blah. And I got to the bottom of this thing, and I was like, where do I sign it? And my dad goes, you don't sign it. He goes, you follow it, or I'm done with you. He goes, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. I don't want to hear from you anymore. Whatever. I'm done with you. You know, I think that it was my dad setting such strict boundaries and limits and not enabling me anymore, and also not like talking to other people about them not enabling anymore, that allows me to sit here today. I think if he hadn't done that, I don't think I'd be sitting here today. My dad and my stepmother literally probably, my mom was in her own active addiction. So for those of you that don't know, my mom got sober 6 months after I did. Her sobriety birthday is June 2nd of 1995, which is another huge part of my story, that my mom and I got to share 12 years and 11 months of sobriety together. If my mom hadn't got sober, I don't know that I would have had much of a relationship with my mom, because my mom was actively drinking. In fact, my counselor told me that I had to stop talking to people that were actively using, and my mom was one of those people, and I had to call my mom and tell her that. I think I saw her in 6 months before she got sober. I think I saw her like 3 times. And my mom did not get sober because of me. It had nothing to do with me. My mom got sober because my Uncle Dave had a massive heart attack, and my mom realized, if I live 1 month or if I lived 10 years, like, I want the quality of my life to improve. She would sit here and she would tell you that she never got a DUI, she was never arrested for it, she never went into debt over her drinking or anything like that, but the quality of her life was shit, and she wanted it to improve. And my mom never went to treatment. She went to 12-step meetings, and she was hardcore about it, and she was really hardcore about it. And I'm forever grateful for that. But my dad and my stepmother, I think, single-handedly kind of like procured this safety net around me of nobody enabling me anymore. Had they not done that, I don't think I'd be sitting here today. I just don't. So yeah, but I've never really had that many people that made me feel bad for my sobriety. It was interesting, like, I mean, I'm like people, I'm not going to say I've never been to like a bar and people won't like offer me a shot. And I'm like, no, dude, I'm good. I'm sober. As soon as you say I'm sober, they kind of like get it real quick. But I also think like in 2024, it's different than 1994. Like in 1994, not a lot of, I mean, I didn't go to bars for like my first, I think it was like first 2 years sober or something like that, 1.5 years sober. I mean, I was told, you know, I mean, the slogans of recovery kept me sober for a very long time. And I was told, if you go around a barbershop long enough, you're eventually going to get your hair cut, okay? And a barbershop equaled a bar to me. If I was going to go to a bar long enough, I was going to get drunk if I wasn't doing other stuff. So I didn't start going to bars until like 1.5 years, 2 years sober, and it was to go dance. And it wasn't just to hang out with other people that were drinking. And if I was at a bar, it was typically with sober people, going to bars with them, and it was to dance, and it was to maybe like, you know, whatever. A lot of times it was with like my ex and like, you know, friends of mine that were sober, and we would go out, you know, and go dancing and stuff like that. But I wasn't living in bars, you know. To be honest with you, when I got sober, that kind of was lost for me, you know. And I got sober at 22, and I felt like that was late, you know, like, I don't know, like, to get sober and then keep on hanging out in bars for me. Like, I mean, I go out every once in a while. There was, like, you know, a long period that I did, and I enjoyed it and I had a good time. But for me, I would ask myself, like, what are you missing from all of that you can't find other places? Like, I don't know. It would have been dangerous for me to go out to a lot of bars early on in sobriety. Okay. Hold on a second. This is like a 3-1. Which years were the hardest? Early years when you, or when you lost emotional sobriety. Okay, so I talk a lot about this on my vlog. So this person is obviously a vlog watcher. I didn't look at your name, I'm sorry. So emotional sobriety is, who are you when you put the drink or the drug down, okay? Like, that's what I was going to say earlier about the misconception of 12-step programs. I think the misconception is, yes, that it's a cult, but also that it's about the drink or the drug. It's not about the drink or the drug. In fact, the only step of the 12 steps that mentions drinking or drugging is the first step. The only step of any 12-step program that mentions the addictive substance, whether that's gambling or whatever, okay, is the first step. Every step after that does not mention anything to do with the substance. And so it's about the solution. It's about, who am I when I put the drink down? And you know, we're taught that drinking is but the problem of the disease that we have. And so is but a symptom of the disease that we have. And so it's not about the drinking. It's about what's going on inside of us, which is why when you work a 12-step program, it's basically to find some kind of sense of a higher power. Now, this is the thing. I think that that's where people get they get hung up on it. Like, you're going to force me to believe in God. Like I said, I know a lot of people that are agnostic that are in recovery. Do I think that you can work a 12-step program and be agnostic or atheist? I think you can. I've known people that have. I will say this. I was willing to put anything in my body to give me some kind of change, of mood altering kind of deal. I don't know why I wasn't willing to kind of put some, maybe like give some faith into some kind of spirituality. And I know that kind of seems like a stretch, but it was like, that was kind of the changing point for me. It was like, you're willing to put a pill in your mouth and that will change your life. You're willing to like smoke this, drink that, and that'll change your life. You're willing to be in horrific relationships to improve your self-worth because this guy that treats you like shit is going to make you feel good. That'll change your life. But you aren't willing to maybe even consider for 1 second that some kind of spiritual experience in your life might give you that same thing, right? So 12-step programs are really about, you know, finding some kind of like spirituality, you know, that's steps 2 and 3, and then doing an inventory of your life and, you know, of your wrongs, and there's a huge, you know, part to that, and then talking about your resentments and your fears and your conduct, and then going over that with somebody else, looking at your character defects, making amends to people, and then doing that, you know, like giving back to others, being of service, and, you know, prayer and meditation, and being of service to others and being an example to others, you know, that's basically the 12-step. And so that's what a 12-step program is about. It's about becoming a better human being. It's not about not drinking. Not drinking is just the first part of that. Once you put the drink down, it's about who am I once I put the drink down? Who am I once I put the drug down, right? So when I talk about emotional sobriety, what I'm talking about is emotional sobriety is who am I when I put the drink or the drug down? Am I an angry son of a bitch? Am I a good person? Am I a nice person? Because a lot of people, this is my only fear for when I see people that just quit using and they just stop and they don't do anything else. It's like, okay, but what are you doing to fix all that shit inside of you? Are you going to church? Are you going to counseling? What are you doing? Okay, because we don't just become drug addicts and alcoholics overnight for nothing, even if we genetically have it. And I believe that I genetically have a predisposition for addiction. But what are you doing inside to fix all that? Because there's a lot of shit. We've hurt people. We've hurt ourselves. I mean, there's a lot of pain that goes along with that. So just to put it down is not going to fix that, all right? So that is the emotional sobriety part. Like when you're emotionally sober, it's when you're working on all that, you're fixing it. So which was harder, having no emotional sobriety? So it was 4 years of my life that I didn't go to meetings, okay, that I stepped out. It was after my mom passed away, and I said, see ya, I'm done, okay? Like, I'm done with this. And I kept in contact with Tanya, and I kept in contact with my sponsor at the time, but other than that, I really had no connection. I never once during that 4 years said, and I think this was a saving grace for me, I never once said that I didn't need sobriety and that I didn't go to meetings, and I continued to tell people that I was sober. I was very proud of my sobriety, even though I wasn't doing anything to work for it. I was very proud of it, and I kept on telling people that I was sober, and I was sober. I just wasn't doing any work for emotional sobriety. I don't even know that I understood what emotional sobriety was until years after I came back. Those 4 years were harder for me than the first years that I got sober by a landslide. I was a nasty, horrible, miserable human being during those 4 years. And it's done a lot. It's been a lot of undoing to work through those 4 years. And I finally feel after, I think it's 12 or 13, 14 years of being back, that I've worked through all that. But that was a lot. That was really, really hard. Thank you for that question. I appreciate it. Somebody said, you're amazing to make it for 30 years. Thank you. I appreciate that. What would you tell your beginning sober self that you have learned after 30 years? Oh, wow. What would I tell my my sober self? You don't have to achieve so much so quickly, so stop pushing yourself. But that being said, anything you want to achieve, you can. Your life is completely open for you. Spend more time with your mom. Sit in the moment when you have moments with people where you just casually have a smile on your face. Or endure the hugs that somebody gives you, because those will be the things that you remember when they're gone. Sit and relish in the moment, because that's really what sobriety gives you back. It unmutes you and it gives you time. What you do with that time is up to you. That's really what sobriety gives you. That's what I would tell my younger self. I don't know that if I had told myself in 30 days sober, do this and do that and do this and do that, that it would have made any difference anyway, you know? I think I would have told myself, younger self, put one foot in front of the other. What I would have told my younger self is this is easier. Like my counselor said this would be the hardest thing you ever do, but it'll be the most valuable thing. I agree with her, but I also think it was easy once I figured out that if I just did what other people... Nobody told me what to do. People made suggestions. When I finally decided just to take their suggestions, because if you find somebody that has what you want and do what they do, is what I was told. When I finally started to do that, it was pretty easy. When somebody'd say, well, I go to meetings a week, I have a home group, you know, I work steps, I have a sponsor, you know, when I want to use, I pick up the phone and I call somebody. It wasn't hard. It wasn't hard at all, you know. Once I started doing those things, I think that's one of the things I would tell my early self. Stop asking why. Stop being resistant. Just do what people suggest to you, and it'll be easy. If you really want this, you know, how bad do you want this? That's what I would say. Oh my God, another one. Do people ever make you feel uncomfortable about not drinking? No, not at all. Actually, people, if like they're drinking around me, typically, and they don't know that I'm sober, like if it's somebody new I meet, they'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry, like I feel really bad or whatever. I mean, it was interesting because I saw somebody say something about a music festival the other day. My experience, I mean, I know which music festivals, like, listen, okay? My husband and I are a lot into electronic dance music. We go to Ultra Music Festival every year. I smell pot there, but not any more than I would smell walking through Vegas or down the streets of Miami, okay? But there are also other music festivals that I probably wouldn't go to, like Electric Forest, okay? It's not a music festival that I'm going to go to where you camp out 3 days and people are tripping, you know, and all that kind of stuff. That's not for me. I don't judge it, have fun, be safe, but that ain't for me, okay? But I don't really ever have any, but I lead with it a lot. I mean, it's not like I'm Peter and I'm sober, but like if it comes up in a conversation, somebody's like, do you want a drink? I'm like, yeah, I'll have a Diet Coke. Oh, you don't want something like that? I mean, I do encounter that. I'll say from servers and bartenders, like I encounter that, where they'll be like, oh, just a Diet Coke? And I'm like, yeah, I don't drink. And they're like, oh, you don't drink? I'm like, no, I'm sober. And then they'll ask questions. People typically ask questions, which is why I share it. Because the thing is, in 2024, everybody knows somebody's sober. I can't tell you how many times I've said that, and somebody will say, me too. So, like, you know, they're like, oh my God, I'm sober too. Or they'll say, oh, I've got 10 years, or I've got, 30 days. I'm like, you can do this. Congratulations. That's powerful. And they'll be like, well, how long have you been sober, you know? And so it's a conversation. There's so many of us out there. We do recover. Somebody sent me this shirt, and I love this. But we do recover. There's so many of us out there. I'm not really that shamed for it that much. Early on, I think... But it was also where I was putting myself, you know? I think I was putting myself in situations where I wasn't going to be shamed. So I think that was important to me, too. But I also am a believer that protect my sobriety at any expense, you know? Listen, I don't... It's not mine to judge somebody else's journey, but when I see people putting themselves in a lot of situations that are dangerous in early sobriety, or doing a lot of things, or doing this and whatever, I'm like, how important is your sobriety to you? Because when it clicked for me, and it didn't really click for me until about 6 months, when I got my 6-month token. And I remember walking out, I just shared this the other day in my video, I walked out in the parking lot of the meeting that I was at, which is the treatment program that I'd gone to, and I looked up at the sky, and it was in the summer, and I held up my coin, I looked up at the sky, and I was like, you fucking did that. 6 months? You haven't done anything in your life for 6 months, let alone stay sober. That was when things started to change for me, because I was like, and you have peace of mind, and people aren't yelling at you. I don't know about other people's journeys, but I'm telling you right now, I was so scared. My addiction was so strong. I was so scared of losing everything again, and that I wasn't going to have nobody in my life, because everybody made it pretty clear to me they were done with me if I ever picked up again. That was my bottom, you know? I believe that my bottom was my fear of being homeless, and my fear of not being able to take care of myself, and my fear of not having anybody in my life. So that was when people said prioritize your sobriety. I wasn't willing to do anything that was going to risk that. I just wasn't. The dumbest thing I did was get in a relationship, you know? I mean, and that was pretty dumb. But I had to learn. I had to learn about that, you know? But that's why I don't judge other people. You know, it's not my place to stand in front of somebody else's pain. But I hope that their pain doesn't cause them going back out there, because I don't want that for anybody, you know? Were you ever scared of life after sobriety? Hell yeah, that's why I never got sober. I couldn't imagine what my life would look like sober. What do you mean? I'm never going to have a drink again? I'm never going to smoke weed again? I'm never going to be... What? Like, life's not going to be fun? I'm not going to be able to commiserate. I mean, yes, I was terrified of what my life would be like after I got sober. That's why I had a plan to go back out there and start using again. Hold on a second. When did you realize that you were sober longer than you have been alive? I think I realized longer than I've been alive. What? Okay, so I think I said this in a vlog the other day. That it wasn't my, I don't know, anyway, what they're talking about. So I've been sober 30 years, so I've been alive 53 years. It was when I had been sober longer than half of my life or whatever like that. I realized it that year that it happened. It was just like last night when I was sitting there and I was like, damn, like we've been together longer than half of my sobriety. Like it's just like moments like you think of stuff like, it doesn't really mean anything in the grand scheme of things, you know? But like now, I mean, I've been sober 30 years. I'm 52 years old. I got sober at 22. I've been sober longer than I was using. Like, I started using when I was 12, so I used for like 10 years of my life. Pretty hardcore. I mean, I was drinking and drunk in my room at 12 years old by myself. When I think about that, you know, I did have people, oh, I'll tell you this, when I got sober early on, some of these people that are dear friends of mine today, some of these old, crotchety old men in recovery that I absolutely love them to death today. But they would say things to me like, I've smelled more alcohol than you ever drank, and things like that when I first got sober. So you talk about shaming. But anyway, but that was kind of like the tough love that I needed back in the day. I don't know. But yeah, you know, it's weird to me to think that, like, okay, when I was looking through pictures last night of, like, old times, it was weird, like, how few pictures I have, because I was looking for pictures of me using, and I really don't have that many. I think I've got, like I said, I got rid of a lot of them. But it was weird how many I don't have, and how many pictures on Instagram, and just in this bucket, I mean, this huge bucket downstairs of pictures, like, of my life after sobriety. I've had so much more life after sobriety, and I think, when I look back and I think that I was not even sure I wanted to get sober because I didn't think that I would have a life, and my sobriety literally gave me a life. And I know that kind of sounds like a poster board, you know, that you'd read or whatever, but it's like, that's the reality. You know, my dad said to me years ago, we were out at lunch for my birthday, and I said, do you think if I kept on using, he without missing a beat, he said, you'd be dead. And I go, do you really think so? He goes, absolutely. How do you not remember how bad it was, Peter? He was like, you would be dead. You would be dead. So, there's that, which is scary. Okay. Somebody said, do you sponsor people? Yes, I do. When did you start feeling normal again after you quit everything? I don't know well, I mean, I've been using for so long, and I started using at 12. So, I mean, normal to me would be like 11 years old. I mean, that was the last time I felt kind of normal. You know what I mean? I think that I know what you mean as far as feeling normal. I think it was probably about, I think at a year, it was like, I've gone through everything. Every holiday, every birthday, every this. I've gone through breakups. I've gone through everything at a year. And I've gone through everything in 1 year. I can do this. That was when I felt like I can do this. A lot of people I've witnessed go back out after a year because they kind of miss that feeling of early sobriety. I think it was probably about 2 years when I started feeling like I'm just a sober person existing in the world. I think that's what you mean. I think it was about 2.5 years when I started feeling like I'm now just a sober person existing in the world with a lot of other people that have, and that's the other thing, is that I don't know that I necessarily ever felt like it was like us against them kind of thing, or like sober people using people, sober people, normal people. I just think, I don't know. I think at some point I just started seeing there's all kinds of people with all kinds of stuff. You know, some of us got mental health stuff. I got that too, you know. Some of us got this, some of us got that. We're all just trying to survive, you know. We're all just trying to pay the rent. That's what it is. It's just trying to survive, you know, one day at a time. Somebody said, I'm trying to get sober. How did you do the first couple days or weeks? It's so hard in treatment. I mean, I think that me having a structured environment, whether that would have been an outpatient program, for me it was an inpatient program the last time, I think I needed that structure. My mom, she went to 12-step meetings, and she went to I think 2 or 3 meetings a day for her first 6 months. You know, I don't know. I think to have some kind of structured counseling or to get involved in something, I don't know. For me, it was going to meetings, and it was being in a treatment facility. I needed structure. I had no structure in my life. I needed somebody to tell me what to do, because I couldn't do it. I think it's, you know, hard. And I will also say this, that always consult with your physician. No physician can arrest you for you going into the office and saying, I use fentanyl, I shoot dope, I smoke weed, I eat pills. No doctor can arrest you for that, or will call the police on you for that, okay? They cannot do that. So if you go in, be honest with your doctor. I have seen people die that have tried to take themselves off of drugs and alcohol. It is extremely, extremely dangerous. And typically by the time that we're at that point, we have no clue our physical dependency on drugs or alcohol. So we have no idea to gauge whether we're there or not. So please, please, please always consult with a professional, a doctor especially, okay? If you're gonna try to stop on your own. It's extremely dangerous. Managing friendships with people in active addiction or alcoholism. Okay, so I have friends of mine. I keep on having to move my leg. I have friends of mine today that drink. I have friends of mine that smoke weed. It doesn't bother me if people drink around me. I don't even care if people like today at 20, 30 years. I don't even care if people are like get high and then like they show up to a dinner. If it's one-on-one, I don't want to do that. I don't really have that many friends that do that. But if it's like in a group and I could care less about that. I don't really have that many friends of mine. I don't think I maybe have one or two people in my life that I think are active alcoholics, and that's not my place to put on them, but I just think their drinking is problematic, and I set very firm boundaries with them. I love them, and if they ever ask for help, 12-step programs are programs of attraction, not promotion, so I'm not like going over there and like pulling them in. Like if they want help, they can ask me for help. If they want suggestions, they can ask me for suggestions, and I'll share my story with them, and I'll help them get help, and I'll do whatever I can to help them get help. But I'm pretty good at setting boundaries, not just with alcoholics and addicts in my life, but with toxic people. For example, if an active alcoholic calls me at like 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll talk to them for 5 or 10 minutes, unless they start saying some scary stuff, and then I'll say, listen, like we're going to call somebody because I'm really worried about you in this moment, and I will follow through with that, okay? That is no joke to me when somebody says something scary to me on the phone. That hasn't happened to me in a very, very long time. But if I'm talking to somebody, they're just like, yeah, and this happened, and they're drunk, okay? And I'm talking about somebody that's like, that I typically know from like being sober and then they go back out, right? I'll talk to them for like 10 minutes just to know that somebody cares. And then I'll be like, you know what, why don't we talk tomorrow? And usually it takes about 10 more minutes to get off the phone. But there's no reason to have a rational I'll tell you, that's one thing I've learned. You cannot have a rational conversation with somebody that's actively drunk. You just can't. Wait till they're sober. So, okay. Let's get into some of these other things. How does addiction affect the next generation? Are kids of addicts more prone to become addicts? Well, we don't really know scientifically that I'm aware of. I drank very similar to my mom. So both sides of my family, like my dad would be like, oh my God, there's rampant addiction on our side. Both sides of my family have a lot of addiction. And my mom got sober 6 months after I did. I believe that I was genetically born an alcoholic or an addict. And when I picked up, it was just magic to me. Something happened to me the first time that I really got drunk, and I can remember when it was, and it was at my elementary school playground late at night with a friend of mine and 2 girls, and I got ripped. And they were all like throwing up and vomiting everywhere. I almost said barfing. They were barfing everywhere. And I was on the swing and I was looking at the stars and I was like, I want to do this again. And I could not get enough of it. It was the best thing in the entire world. And that's why they say with like heroin addiction, chasing the dragon, because you have that first moment. That's like, I think for the rest of my entire using career, I was chasing that moment on the playground. I was swinging and looking at the stars and everything was magic. And it did. Everything felt like magic in that moment. But everything doesn't stay like magic, And that's the thing. So I definitely think that I have the ism in me. The other things that come with it, like my dad would tell you as like a 4-year-old, he'd be like, Peter was an alcoholic long before he ever picked up. And it wasn't about the drink. It was just about who he was as a person, My dad would say that as well. This is going to stop in just a second. I can't believe I'm at an hour. Hold on. So I think there's a lot of genetic traits you can see in people that have, I believe 100% in a genetic predisposition for addiction. And I think it's important to educate your kids on that, especially if you're in recovery or you have it in your family. I don't know about skipping generations and all that kind of stuff, but I would say, when your kids are old enough to understand, and I'll just put this in perspective for you. I started drinking alcoholically at 12. Okay? Think about that for a second. Like my nephews are 8 and 8. The 8 and 12? They're 8 and 12. And they know that T.O. Peter doesn't drink. They know that T.O. Peter doesn't drink because he had problems in the past. Do they know the terms like alcoholic and 12-step? No. But they know that T.O. Peter does not drink because when T.O. Peter used to drink, it was bad. It was problems. Yeah, we've had those conversations, you know? I think it's important to have those conversations. And I will say this, I'm not saying at 5 years old, you have to sit your kid down and talk about the history of alcoholism in your family, okay? I'm saying normalize having discussions about mental health issues and substance abuse in families. I mean, we know language to use. You know, when you're using different words with your kids for toilets and things like that, you can come up with different words to use for those things as well to educate your kids. And kids know a lot more than you give them credit for. I will tell you that. It's interesting when I go places and kids will be like, well, you're not drinking any champagne, you know, or something like that. I mean, kids are always like kind of the first ones to notice, you know? Yeah. Okay, can you expand the idea of emotional sobriety? What does that mean? Well, like I said, it means like, who am I when I put down the drink or the drug? Like, have you ever met somebody that stopped drinking and stopped using, but they're still an asshole? Like, have you ever met somebody like that? They don't have much emotional sobriety, okay? They're not really emotionally sober, which means that they're not working on the emotional part of their addiction. They're just putting the bottle down. I've met a lot of people, okay, that don't have nothing that I want. They're sober, but they don't have anything that I want. Basically, back in the day, we used to call it like a dry drunk, is what it is. Is when you stop using and you're dry, but you haven't worked on yourself. There's a difference between being dry and being sober, to me. There's a huge difference. You know, listen, you save lives both ways, but what's the contingency of your life? I want to live a good life. I want to live a full life, which means I have to work through some painful shit so that I'm not an angry, nasty, ugly person every single day of my life, if that makes sense. Miserable person. I don't want to be that person, you know? So I have to work through that shit. But I've met a lot of people in and out of the rooms of 12-step programs that are really, really angry. I've met a lot of people in 12-step meetings that are really angry and really mad at the world and have many years of sobriety. And I would say that, you know, like, I don't know, they just, you know, for me, I would need to work on my emotional sobriety. You know what I mean? Okay. How long was your last day in treatment? I think it was like 34, 35 days. 30 things you've learned in 30 years video. I could do that one if you guys want me to. Okay, hold on a second. How did you distract yourself from the urge to use? I'm trying to quit. It's all that's on my mind. Like I said, going to 12-step meetings, being in a structured environment. People ask me a lot about cravings early on. Cravings for me were not day by day. They were minute by minute. And I've shared this story so many times that I used to have pieces of paper with my dealers' names on it next to pieces of paper that had people's numbers on it from 12-step meetings. And I would look at the clock and I'd be like, okay, it's 4 o'clock. If I can make it to 4:30, at 4:30 I can use. I can walk down the liquor store. I can call one of my dealers. And I would call all these people in scraps of paper from meetings. And I would get a hold of somebody. And they'd say, what do you need from me? Do you need me to come pick you up? Do you need me to talk to you on the phone? And sometimes I just had to piecemeal a whole day together. That was really how hard it was for me. It was really, really, really difficult for me in early sobriety to stay sober. It was really, really hard for me. Okay. Congratulations, Peter. Why do you think that you turned to drugs and alcohol? I think it's a good question. I think that it's multifaceted. I think that, I had a genetic predisposition. I think me being gay and knowing that I was gay and not coming to terms with it was a huge part of it. I think that I was drinking and drugging to mute all that and not have to deal with it. I could be everybody you wanted me to be. I could be the meanest asshole, the baddest person in the world, and I was at times, okay? You did not fuck with me, okay? You did not fuck with me when I was using. I think what's hard is that even though I'm 30 years sober, that part of me is still in there sometimes, you know? It's like, I gotta hush him up a little bit. It's like, shh. But that part of me, like, you do not fuck with me, okay? Like, that's still inside of me. And I think that when I was able to drink and drug, it was really like a reaction to a lot of the bullying that I went through, you know, and a lot of the low self-worth that I was experiencing. That when I drank and I drugged, fuck self-worth, okay? I could dance on tabletops. I was it. I was gold, you know? And when I was drinking, I was drugging, Fuck them bullies. Fuck anybody that came for me, okay? Fuck those people. You do not fuck with me. And I could feel that way when I was using, you know? When I was using, everybody was in love with me. And if they weren't, fuck them. I don't care, you know? It was all of that. It was all of those feelings of muting things and not having to deal with pain and putting pain off until tomorrow and all that kind of stuff. And I had fun and I had cried and laughed and had good times. And I've got 1,000,001 funny stories that happened. But the most powerful thing that I learned was how to have all of that sober, you know? I remember going to concerts sober. I had a friend of mine that I got, and he wasn't in sobriety, but he and I became friends, and he worked for a music company, and so he'd get free tickets to stuff. And I remember he and I went, and I can remember going to, I think it was my second year sober, we went to a Dave Matthews concert. And I was like, and I've been to my fair share of concerts, Dead and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, this is a different experience. Being sober, going to a concert, like, this is a different experience, you know what I mean? And then I started learning that, and it took me some time. It took me a lot of time, a lot of years, to learn to that I deserve to love myself again, you know, and that I didn't really need somebody else to love me. That was a hard one to work on, and I learned that I didn't need to tell people don't fuck with me, okay, because it didn't really matter if they did or didn't. What mattered was my response to that. And then I couldn't control other people anyway. I could only control my reaction and my response to that. And what other people thought about me was none of my business. And that if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got. And to keep it simple, stupid. And most importantly, to take it one day at a time. And all of those slogans that I learned in my first month of sobriety have still got me through all these years and all of this shit that I've gone through in my life to have today what I consider, as my old sponsor used to say, a life beyond my wildest dreams, which includes you guys. It includes me getting to get up every single day and do something that I love by making videos. And in that, I get to share the story of sobriety. And that's huge to me. That's really powerful. Because if you had told Peter at 22 and a half years old that 30 years from now you're going to be sharing your story on a video and that thousands of people are going to watch it, I'd have been like, get fucked. That is never going to happen, okay? And I ain't going to be here. I'm going to be sitting on a beach somewhere in California smoking a joint, okay? But that's not my life today, you know? The universe had other things planned for me, or God did. And here I am, sharing my story with you. And like I said, I have a life beyond my wildest dreams, and I'm forever grateful for that. So anyway, let me know what you guys would like to know more about addiction or recovery. I'm more than willing to make more videos about it. I love talking about addiction and recovery. I'm super, super passionate about it. And for those of you out there, for that one person out there that's watching this video, that's been thinking, I want this, but I don't know, and I'm scared, but I want it, but I don't know, and I'm scared, and what will it look like, and how will I tell that? 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day at a time, you can do it. We do recover. I love you guys, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.